everyone. So I have the privilege, is it, to try to explain how this all works. Isn't there volumes written, a big thick book like this called Science of Mind? And how many years I've been studying this for probably a good 30, 40 years myself. And it comes down to a day with you to say how it all works. This whole year, the Centers for Spiritual Living are celebrating 100 years of this philosophy of Ernest Holmes, presenting these ideas in this form. And so we're looking at how to live the science of mind. And so we're poking at, last week Mary talked about just what science of mind is. And then as I was reading about the different ideas, I ran across a fun little video of Ernest Holmes giving one of his lectures. Now, that was the first time I ever heard his voice. And it's sort of interesting in your head voice when you're reading something, you see somebody that has this powerful voice. I always thought he sounded like Craig Boyer or something, like this big, deep voice that just kind of took you in. But it was sort of this thin, airy voice, like, let me tell you about the, and I thought, what? Trying to turn up my volume, turn up the bass, trying to figure, wait a minute, that's not the Ernest Holmes I thought. But then I realized the truth about him was that he does capture you. Okay, I got beyond all my judgment because he had this really bad suit that just kind of kept bunching up, and I kept thinking, okay, get past his voice, get past the suit, and pay attention to what he's saying. So finally, I got into that space, and I realized he was just going on without a note in front of him of just this amazing wisdom, amazing heart, amazing dedication of his whole spirit to this truth. And that's what we honor today, that wisdom, the way he was able to take all of the philosophies from all the world and put it together in volumes for us to then take into our own heart and try to distill the truth and live from the principles. So Martin Luther King, we're honoring him over this weekend of celebrating this man's life and his dedication to freedom. He knew freedom. And in knowing freedom, he didn't look at the effects. See, that's what happens. We start, the effects are so amazing and dramatic, and they pull us in. But he said, no, there's a freedom. And there's a way to that freedom through nonviolence and through love. And so he held to that truth. And that's what's being asked here in this teaching, is that we understand a principle. A principle is a life truth that never wavers, that always, always rings true. So you all have developed your own beliefs around truth, but then there is truth itself. So that's where we're going to explore today, if I can do that justice. There is a quote from Ernest Holmes from the Beverly Hills lecture. Our movement will not depend on a talk as I'm giving to you now. Our evolution, what it will mean to the world, will not depend on the books we write. It will depend on what we do with it, right? It cannot be one more talk from the centers. It won't be one more book that you read. It's where you take that and put it into action, where you start to realize, there's a famous saying of Ernest Holmes, there's a power greater than you, and you get to use it. And when you realize, oh my God, there's a power I don't need to know, but God knows, there is a power, whatever we want to call that which is, there is something greater out there, and I get to use it. And when we rest in that, when we unite ourselves, unify ourselves, and recognize that that sense of divinity has our back, and then we go into the truth of all there is, we realize there is power in our actions and in our words, and it's filled with love. He also says in that same series of lectures, it is necessary in our movement that we have as many people as possible who will work with us and for us, knowing what they do and why they do it and how they do it. And then the most important part, not just knowing it, but what? Doing it. Doing it. So this is your invitation. Here's his famous quote from the thing called life. And he began every broadcast with his very powerful voice. I should not have ever planted that seed in your mind. So there is a power for good in the universe, greater than you are, and you can use it. So I'm going to keep reminding you of that. And throughout your week, throughout your days, take that in and keep reminding yourself, wait a minute, there is a power in the universe. So every time we go into a sense of recognizing we're sort of in a whiny victim mode, wait a minute, wait, right there, stop. There is a power greater than all that I'm seeing here. And I'm tapping into that, and I am going to use it. There's that word that's so potent. We must use it. So we launch into this knowing from there. And I wanted to share in Living the Science of Mind, where a lot of the wisdoms of this month, some of the talk titles, come from Living the Science of Mind. And it's a wonderful book because sometimes when you're looking in the big volume of the Science of Mind textbook, it's you can loop around and think, didn't he just say that? How long are his sentences? And then you realize, wait, what's the point? Wait, where did we begin here? Where the Living the Science of Mind, they pull it, it's still him, but they're pulling passages out and titling it so you can find exactly what you need, maybe in a place where you're thinking, okay, I need a little bit of wisdom backbone here. And that Living the Science of Mind is a beautiful text to help lead you there. But he says, spiritual power is of no particular value to us until we use it. We must not only be conscious of this power, we must be actively conscious of it, awake and ready to use this. So buried inside of us, here's where it gets kind of sticky, because it is a simple truth, but it gets a little sticky because we have our beliefs. We have a subconscious compartment of our mind, and we are wired to have all the experiences and to remember everything. I was speaking to a class recently. We were talking about past lives, the curiosity of past lives. Why can't we remember them? And I shared with them something that Yogananda has said. You can't even deal with what's going on in this lifetime. Why would God make you suffer with, lifetimes of some of the things that you carry shame about? And I really have to agree with that. Of course I do. It's Yogananda. But I find myself, so here we have the storehouse, this incredible computer of ourself, of our mind, that who really knows what a real mind is, but it's not just the brain, but the brain is wired to track us to these pathways of our subconscious. So in there is all of the material, all of the information that we've ever downloaded. And sometimes we don't even know where some of our beliefs come from. And we haven't even had the opportunity yet to explore them. And yet they're always painting an understanding of what we're experiencing out in our world. And so the invitation of this whole teaching is to pierce through that thin veil of the subconscious mind and to speak into the conscious mind of greater power of truth. There's a power greater than me, and I can use it. And so we realize that if we bubble up with doubt, we look carefully at that, say, name that, I feel doubt. But there is a truth here, and this is where the idea of using this philosophy starts to really operate in your life, because you're developing deep faith in the abiding one. You're allowing yourself, I don't know, but God knows, and I lean into that with my whole heart, and I allow my words and my mind and my heart to be the activity of that divine. So there is a power in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it. And we're only as good with that as we are trying to use it. Ken Gordon, Reverend Ken Gordon, the leader of our movement now, he advises us to use our hearts with it and not just the brain. Don't limit your experience. We have ruts in the brain, and if we are not attending to it, and here comes my word, spiritual practice, if we're not allowing ourselves to sit with the divine in those moments of stillness and allow the divine to speak through us, to us, as us, to inform us in those moments, then we're cluttered with the debris of our old ways, and we are triggered in moments. I was thinking about this with that horrible threat to Hawaii yesterday, how they were saying people just went wild, crazy, running. I thought of Rich, you and Kelly, because you were in Hawaii. I was telling Charlie, I was trying to see the people. Is Kelly and Rich there? Are they okay? But I thought, how frightening. You're in paradise. Run where? Nuclear stuff gets on you wherever you are. And it's like, it's a haunting. And people, what do you do? What do you do? I don't know, but God knows. And so there's a moment where we don't want to fall into fear and run helter-skelter in whatever our life is pulling forward as a challenge for us. We want to be soul-centered and God-directed in a place of absolute peace and knowing that a greater good is unfolding right here, right now, and I am a participant in that greater good. When we start to anchor into our mind a great truth that we can always restore ourselves to our center, so be it, and it is done. So Ken Gordon says, let us use our heart space. And in this beautiful book, and I saw one in the bookstore by Hamin Sunam, it has Zen philosophy, and I love this. Do not force yourself on a spiritual path. So do not force this teaching upon yourself. Let its teaching gently open your heart and lead you. Let this teaching lead you. Don't let it drag you. Don't let it shame you. Don't let it make you think you've done something wrong because you have a sniffle. Let it just gently lead you back to your power, back to your strength. He says, let its teaching gently open your heart and lead you like salt, gradually dissolving in water. Let the teaching dissolve in your heart. I think that's so eloquently put. Let the teaching, let all of the ways the many practitioners and ministers here offer wisdoms to you. We invite you to sign up, not to fill the classes. We'll do it for 1 or 2 or 3 people. But we are so eager to share this wisdom, not only with you, but to our own self, to remind ourselves again and again and again, there is a power out there that is greater than we are, and we ought to be using it. So let this idea invite you to step into this teaching in a way that you've never done it before, so that you can apply and use these principles in your world. Think of God. Ken Gordon says, think of God as God would be thinking in you. God thinking in you. It allows you to reset yourself. I was sharing in a Quimby class this week. There is a 6-second magic moment, 6 seconds, where there is a quality in your thinking that if you paused in that 6 seconds, it will lead you to a wisdom inside of you. And so often, when we're triggered, it's like, and then you're going, oh, can I take that back? And sometimes we can't. Sometimes whatever was in that instant already was a dart maybe in someone's heart. But if we pause, 6 seconds is not very long. And you take a moment, and in that 6 seconds, you allow yourself to track to a wisdom within you, and let that be the word that is spoken as a healing moment in that very moment that it's called for. So we are only as good as what we can do with it. Ernest Holmes says the realization that we have this ability must be gained by our application of this knowledge. It calls for us to stay positive, not Pollyanna. That's kind of annoying because you know what? Effects are real when we see them out there. It's not that if you have a cold and people say, oh, it's not real, it's just an effect. No, I feel terrible. Yeah, you're feeling that. But there's a deep knowing that within you there is a perfection, a seed of perfection, and you do not need to linger in suffering. No, the cold is over now. And you watch your mind. This is what I shared at the Intentions Retreat last weekend. Cross currents of your mind. It didn't go over that well with everyone, but because your cross currents come up. And they're ours. But they also are an invitation for us to say, oh, let me look at that more deeply. Let me think as God would think here, not the way Sue has been thinking about it for so long. Let me look at what is a cross current. So we had to stand in an intention. So we stand in a principle and we say our truth. And then there's this little, oh yeah, say what? Yeah, really? And so those come up. Those are cross currents. And so the divine says, okay, I'm doing it to her as, the word as, A-S, as she believes, therefore it is so. So I might say, I am a powerful woman. That comes up, and so God gives me just that. You see? You see it in your own life. When you stand and you say, I am, and you fill in that, I am, watch what comes up. And then tend to that, look into that, dissect into that, and say no more. No more is that operating in me. Because there's a power greater than all that little shrinking away, all of those little cross currents of doubt, insecurity, fear, anger, unforgiveness, all those cross currents. They're there, but we strip that away. It is what all the divine masters say. It is the thin veil. Let us pierce that and let God move through me as me. That's our invitation here. We must have a deep acceptance of this divine presence. Think about that. Think about that as you close your eyes for a moment, not thinking so much of what your cross currents might be, but what is this divine presence? What is this that is being called forth here? Can I feel that? Can I breathe that? Can I unify with that divine and let it be a power generated now through me as me? And then may I speak my word in a prayer. May, just as the Bible says, pray unceasingly. May my words all be a prayer, not a curse. Interesting, as I was preparing for this, gossip, what that does to us. And it shrinks us into ourselves. And it causes this energetic field around us that really shrinks in, closes us in, binds us. Gossip. Oh, but it's so juicy to share. And maybe if I just kind of skirted around it and kind of made them start talking about it, so I can add my 2 cents and then feel free of my great wisdom of total nasty gossip here. No, let it go. Let it go. Let the ways that we have been repeating things that make us unhappy in the news, let it go. Let us not feed that energy. Let us keep our eyes knowing that there is a greater good out there. There is a power out there greater than all the effects we see in our world right now, and we're using it. We are using it because our world is done unto us as we believe. How do we believe? Let's clean that up. Let's clean that up and go into a place of recognition and conviction, complete conviction in this truth. Sri Aurobindo, one of the later teachers of Ernest Holmes, says, that within us which seeks to know and to progress is not in the mind, but something behind it which makes use of it. Great consciousness is what Ernest Holmes refers to as the power that we ought to be using. Einstein, in all his research as a brilliant scientist and philosopher, says something deeply hidden had to be behind all things. Every scientist comes to that. And that's what's so beautiful about this holy science. is because all the philosophers clear back to Plato and Socrates, and even beyond that, they knew a truth. They knew an absolute truth. And there is remember the allegory of the cave? And this is from Plato. And he speaks of this idea, and I think a lot of us have been invited into that understanding. It's been brought up, and Socrates and Plato play around with this idea of the cave and what is that. And he suggests that there is this cave, this dark cave. So think about these moments when we don't know anything. And so these three prisoners, bound and locked into the cave, their wrists are bound, their legs are bound, their head is bound, so they can't look to either direction to discern anything other than what's before them. So they focus on a wall in front of them, and above them is the light changes throughout the day. And so shadows cast their way down into the cave, and they make interpretations of those shadows. They don't know what they really are, but they start to believe their interpretations of those shadows. And then they start to make a game out of those shadows, and they start to predict what's going to come next from those shadows. And so that's how that whole allegory starts about the men in the cave. But then we have the one that escapes that cave, right? He is able to come out and escape. And he represents, that one that escapes represents the true philosopher, that which is us. The one that escapes a way of seeing the world that maybe we were fed and bound to see by our upbringing. Somebody shared with me recently too this idea that sometimes when we're in this philosophy, our friends or our family don't support us that much because it's a free thinking. You're free thinking, right? And that doesn't sit well if they want you to be in their faith path that they grew you up in. They want you to be that. Parents want you to be that. Don't be doing all this woo-woo stuff. Do this. You'll get where you need to go. And so we have to be very gentle with that. Ernest Holmes said, this is a philosophy that you apply to all faith path. That's the beauty of it. He didn't want a church. He didn't want all this. We created this. And so the peoples, not just the center, but all people develop this way of, let this wisdom have a way of being revealed in a way that draws people in. And so you take this teaching and you can go back to your faith path, but you're so much wiser. You're such a wiser philosopher. And so the escaped prisoner now seeks knowledge outside the cave, outside his senses, because all they could do was rely on the five senses, and especially sight of what they saw flash across this wall in the cave from the dance of light outside. And it says his intellectual journey represents a philosopher's journey, finding truth and wisdom. And the other person's reactions when he comes back into the cave and tries to set them free, they're frightened, right? They don't know any different. Leave me alone. I'm safe here. I'm watching the dance of light as I know it. Don't tell me all these spooky things. And so they're scared, and they want to target him as something evil now. So where are you? Are you dancing with shadows of perception from your mind? Or are you seeking beyond that? The invitation, you see, is to go into the greater light. Isn't that cool, that this idea of this ancient story inviting us to go into the greater light? And there is a thought, sometimes we have the wisdom, but sometimes in our experience, it's like the dimmer switch. We dimmed it down because we're in suffering. The light gets dimmed down, and we don't quite see as clearly. And then a friend of deep knowing, or you take a class, and suddenly that dimmer is put on full bore, and you're going, whoa, I see it clearly now. I see more clearly now. There is a power, and I ought to be using it. So the allegory of the cave, don't take it at face value. Look at it deeper to find a meaning and an understanding of your way with thoughts and teachings, your search for truth, your interpretation. And what you'll realize, because this is the quality of the divine, it's always for a greater good. There is an alignment of truth, of love, beauty, joy, life, light, these qualities of absolute divine. We rest in that, and we seek that as our totem. That many times you hear, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. In those stories, there's got to be light in here somewhere. And you'll always discover the light. You will always discover the light. It's an absolute given, and we're asking all of us through this year to really put use of these teaching. Make it a demonstration in your world. Have a testament to the truth. Watch your life unfold. I vision myself calling people up and doing, like holy roller type of prayers, like, and you or you, and I pictured all this and thinking, I'd want to do it for every single one of you. I just want that truth for all of you. I want that revealed. I want that power to move in your life, to get thee behind you, all of the doubt, the fear, the hesitancy, the uncertainty. Be done with it. Let this year be the one that you take this teaching and you walk out of the cave of confusion and you are exploring something that is the absolute. Quimby, my Quimby, he said, and he's a scientist too, he ran across a stumbling block which upset all my theories. Now that'll happen. That'll happen. You will reach a teaching, you will reach a knowing that says, well, this doesn't make me feel very comfortable if I do this. I am intuitively guided by the one to make this action, to have this vision, but I'm afraid. And so we fall back. But the invitation, that's a stumbling block. And he said, and left me without anything but the bare experiments. I went to work to prove my belief, and the experiments proved anything I believed. And I concluded that man is just what he thinks he is to himself. Powerful. What you think is going on, you've created it. What you have thought yesterday is who you are today. So the invitation is to create your tomorrows. Sometimes when I'm in a kind of state of mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know what next week's going to be like, because I got all this stuff going on inside my head, and I don't want my other days to be like this, so stop it now. Stop it now, and I become the gatekeeper of that thinking, because there's a power, and it's immutable and available. This is Ernest Holmes. To all of us, right where you are. It flows through you as you feel that power. So just even in the physicalness of your body, if you're tense in your neck and shoulders, or your hands are clenched, or your jaw's tight, let all that go right now. And say, wait a minute, what is it like to be a vehicle of this divine? To just simply let go and let this flow through me as me. And through each of us, it is ever present. It flows through us. It flows through us to manifest for us. So in this teaching, when you hear people say, oh, they think they're God. No, we know God, and that God is greater than we are, and we have allowed ourselves to be an instrument of that divine peace, that love, that joy. That's what we want as the effects in our world. That's what we want for the people of Korea, of Hawaii, of the United States, of Africa, of South America, as we go around and we think, I choose to send prayers of good thought for the well-being of all. And when we gather and cluster in that knowing, whoa, the 100th monkey reveals itself, and boom, it is done. They do these woo-woo things with this little energy. It's called an aura assessor. And this was a scientist. He had this little meter on and then there's this wand that kind of stuck up like a insect antenna. And he's going, now watch this. And so he had a lady standing, and he goes, watch, she's thinking negative thoughts. And she was told to think negative thoughts. And so he goes up to her, and this thing, as soon as it gets in her energy field, it would stick up like an antenna of an insect. You know how they are. And so he's going, and he's like 2 feet in front of her. And then finally it comes up. So she was closed in. And then she thought good thoughts. She thought good thoughts. 20 feet away. 20 feet away, it was able to detect her. Look how your good spreads. I just love that idea. And to visually see it, we've played around with it in our classes, and I try to shut all the blinds because I don't want, when the Buddha song is going back there, seeing us with our water wands, looking at our energy fields to prove how powerful our thought field is. But it's really fun to take these little sticks and watch them as you come towards somebody and they're thinking and they just cross over. Happens every time. And it's just so phenomenal. It's science. And it's this energy field. And it's our good thoughts that we're giving out into the world. So let our bubble grow so large and expansive in our community that it draws people into that knowing. What's going on? What's going on there? And as we celebrate our 40th, we're inviting all the wisdom of the teachers. We stand on so many people's shoulders here. So much good has been invested in these walls. So many years. So much joy. And we want us all to celebrate that just as a ball of light. So often when we've gotten together in leadership meetings, we do vision. And the vision always comes out. I see a light. I see a light, a beacon, drawing people here. Drawing wisdom. Drawing each of us here. Now is the time. This is the year. We are the beacon. We are the light. I'm excited because the power that I speak of is in this room. It's in you. Don't let it be small. Don't let it be afraid to shine. So let's do a treatment that supports that. So the invitation really is for you to breathe. To breathe your divinity. To look carefully at your mind and say yes to the truth, to the power, to the love of the divine flowing through you, as you, right here, right now. Feel it. Breathe it and feel that as you take a deeper breath, it fans the light brighter and broader. Before you, beside you, behind you, above you, below you is this divine light, this divine knowing. You are indeed a conduit of this truth. And there is a faith now in the words that you speak. As you articulate the prayers and the thoughts, every thought becomes a prayer in your world. And you begin to see that I am using this divine intelligence for a greater good. I am the gatekeeper of my mind, and I allow the good to flow, the positive to flow. And I give thanks, for I feel right here, right now, anointed by love itself, by light. I am the divine. I am that, and it flows through me right here, right now. I am that I am. There is no more to say. God is, I am, and I'm at peace. I give thanks for that knowing, and I allow it to operate through me as me throughout the rest of my days. Thank you, God, for the source, the inspiration of Ernest Holmes to guide me, to lead me, to inspire me. So be it, and so it is. Thank you.